So what's up, guys? Today I'm going to talk about the mistakes I made as a Korean immersion learning beginner. So I think some of you have said that you guys are okay with this sort of rambly, laid back style. So I'll stick to it. So the first mistake I made, which I think is probably the most important one, was not reading from day one. So when I was an absolute beginner, I kept telling myself, okay, I'll read when I'm ready. But the thing is, like, people always say, oh, I'll do something when I'm ready, but you'll never be ready. Like, there'll never be a perfect time to start something. So the best time to start is right now. So if you're a beginner listening to this and this is your first day, read. Like, just right now, just pick up something and read. Because in my opinion, I think everyone agrees that reading is the best way for beginners to acquire the language. Because pure listening is probably too fast, too chaotic, and you just don't have enough immersion hours under your belt as a beginner to actually pick out stuff that you don't know, or for your brain to recognize I+1 sentences, right? So it's probably going to be just raw audio. So, and it will take a while to actually reach a stage where you're not working with raw audio, you're working with the actual language, right? So the best way to get exposed to the language in the first place is to read. And so I think I probably missed out. Like, the first 2 months my reading was negligible. Like, it's too little. So I think I cut out 50% of my potential gains I could have made in my first 2 months, purely because I didn't read. And so, and it's not even that much time. So like 30 minutes a day in the first 2 months would have been enough to catch up. Not catch up, but to reap the rewards of reading. So if you're a beginner listening right now, read. And so the next mistake I made was chasing numbers. So I think people I, in a sense, overly fetishize the 10K number, right? 10,000 sentences, 10,000 hours, right? Because the whole AJAD thing, like, even the whole name was the 10,000 hours, 10,000 sentences method, right? But the thing is, because people have like overly fetishized it, to this point, it's like everyone's like, oh, if I just reach 10K, I'll be fluent. But it's like, it's just a number, right? So there's no way that number applies for everyone. And so and in my opinion, I think 10K is just where the true learning begins. So after that, you're actually learning, in my opinion. I mean, I haven't reached it yet, but that's what I think so far, based on my experiences. So when I was a beginner, I had that mindset, right? So I was like, oh, if I just get 10K, I'll be fluent. But it's just a number. And so what happened was, you end up doing things that are counterproductive. So I remember, I think in like my third month, at this phase where I did 50 new cards a day for Anki. I mean, everyone who has done Anki knows that 50 new cards a day, especially with bad learning steps and the interval settings, is a recipe for disaster. So I was doing close to 1 hour, 2 hours worth of Anki a day, which everyone knows, if you're an immersion learner, it's just not a good use of time. You're not immersing, right? And so there's a diminishing returns in terms of the numbers, right? So if I could go back, I would tell my younger self, just don't do so many cards every day, and you don't have to chase crazy numbers, right? So because people like Cats kept talking about, oh, you have to listen in your sleep, when you're showering, you gotta listen to the Japanese. But the thing is, these, just because you're chasing a number doesn't mean you're actually having good immersion, right? Like, for example, I don't know, like for Anki, if you could do 5K cards, but all of them have like a frequency of like 1 for every 10,000 words, right? So those cards are pretty much useless, because you'll never come across them in real life, right? Or you can make 10K cards. No, so you can make 1K cards, but each of them are the most common vocab in Korean, right? And so that would be way more useful, even though it's a fifth of 5K. That 1K cards would be so much more useful in terms of reaching comprehension, right? And so, and also maybe you could do 10K hours of passive listening, but maybe you're just not as focused compared to maybe someone doing, I don't know, 3K of active but being completely laser sharp focus. Like, that's completely different, right? So obviously you should chase numbers, but I think they should be just progress milestones. They shouldn't be the end goal, right? The end goal should be, I mean, honestly, I don't think there should be an end goal, but these should be just milestones along the way. And so I think, and also the guy, there's a guy called, I think his name, this is Big Data on YouTube, right? So he's learning English through immersion, right? So he had this video about efficiency. So he said that, basically, to summarize, he said that we shouldn't look at we shouldn't look at the time period, right? So we shouldn't look at, did it take you 20 years or 5 years? We should see how many hours did it take you, right? So even though people are, people like I don't know, Katz or Matt talked about, the 18-month was like around the time they kind of got it. But if you think about it, in that 18 months they were spending like a ridiculous amount of time every day. That's just not practical, right? Whereas someone else maybe would take, I don't know, 5 years, but maybe they're only doing 2 hours a day, right? So, or maybe just 1 hour a day. So just because you have the numbers doesn't mean you're doing it more efficiently. So if you're a beginner right now, just don't chase a number, just chase the process. So make sure you're just getting the daily stuff in, but don't think that don't be so gung-ho about getting a particular number, because you'll never reach a stage where you're happy just because of a number. I think the next mistake I made was worrying or stressing over ambiguity. Because especially when you're a beginner, even if you make like amazing amount of gains, so let's say you go from 1K cards to 2K cards, let's say you go from 5% comprehension to 10% comprehension, that's 100% increase, right? But 5% to 10% comprehension means you're going from 95% unknown to 90% unknown. So in the context of everyday immersion, the 95 and 90% is still basically means you don't know much, right? And so if you keep stressing over stuff that you don't know, you'll basically never be happy. I mean, this is stupid life advice, but it's true. If you keep worrying about, I don't know this, how come I don't know this, you'll never be able to immerse properly. So that's why I think my first few months were actually quite stressful in a sense, because I was trying to capture everything. So I was only noticing the stuff that I didn't know. So what I should have done, which I really think I should have done in the first place, was have the mindset of it's kind of like fishing, right? So there are a lot of fish in the sea, but if you catch one fish, you'll be happy, right? But if you catch a fish and you worry that there's like 7 billion more that I didn't catch, then you're obviously going to be unhappy, right? So instead of focusing on what you don't know, I should have focused on what I do know. So if I come across something that I know that, then boom, that's the fun. So, and especially when you're reading, because in the initial stage you pretty much don't know everything that you're reading, right? So what happens is that you just instinctively, it's human nature, you want to know the unknown. So I had a stage where I was looking up everything, which I really think is a huge mistake, because it trained me to become a dictionary machine, but not an immersion machine, right? So by searching everything up, I was on the verge of burnout, honestly, and so it wasn't fun, because it just makes you notice how much you don't know, right? So I had to learn to tolerate ambiguity. I mean, it's easier said than done. And so what I should have done was basically focus on what I do know, and only look up stuff that occur quite frequently and capture your attention. So just don't look up everything. Just try to enjoy the text and look up stuff that actually capture your attention. So it's a very interesting concept, because I wasn't too I didn't quite believe in the idea that stuff would just pop up. But the more you immerse, the more you'll be like, hey, that's so familiar. I've seen it somewhere before, or I've seen it a few times. I should look it up. And that's how you remember stuff, right? So if you're a beginner right now, I think what you should do is learn to enjoy what you do know and don't worry too much about what you don't know, because you'll get it anyways, right? And so the next mistake I made was not trusting the process. I think this is also quite a difficult one to do when you're a beginner, because the time span people talk about is not in a month. It's not in terms of weeks or months, right? People are saying, oh, it'll take years. So human beings are very bad at judging quantities bigger than stuff that they can measure with their fingers, basically, right? So when people hear the word years, it seems like an extremely long time, and so people will want to look at short-term gains, right? So this is why people tend to procrastinate. People tend to make bad choices. It's because humans are more prone for short-term gains rather than looking at the long term, right? Because the long term is too far away for the human mind to process. And so when I first started, I think in the first 2 weeks, it was not fun. It was not fun at all, because all I was doing was worrying why I wasn't progressing enough. Which is quite obvious if you think about it in retrospect, right? Like, you go from 500 vocab to 750. That extra 250 cards, in terms of the proportion of that amount of vocab in comparison to the entire language is basically zero. It's negligible. It's so little that it seems like a lot at the moment, right? In the moment, 250 new cards is a lot, right? But if you look at the grand scheme of the entire language, it's basically zero. So you won't notice, and then maybe you end up recognizing 10 words, right? You won't notice it because these 10 words are maybe in a video which has, like, I don't know, 10,000 words, right? So you will never notice how much you improve in the short term, especially with immersion, because immersion as a method tends to be famous for not having a lot of short-term progress, right? So the thing is, it seems very difficult now, because when you're first starting, a week seems like a long time, right? So now when I look back after 8 months, it's seriously such a short time. Honestly, it's such a short time. But when you first begin, even every hour seems like an insane amount of time, because you're just not used to it yet. You're just not used to the thing. So, and I was so close to quitting the whole immersion thing, because I didn't see the progress that I wanted to. I was so close to quitting immersion, but but now that I look back, it made sense, because in terms of a number standpoint, you just won't be able to see anything, and any progress in any skill, in fact, in such a short amount of time. So I'd say you need at least, I don't know, a couple months, at least 6 months, until you start to notice a lot. But then it's crazy, because like maybe at the fifth month, it's very similar to the first month, right? But then all of a sudden the 6th month is so much more. It just suddenly click. There'll be a point in your immersion career that stuff will click. I think that's the thing that people should look for, but it doesn't happen overnight, right? So what you have to learn is you have to learn to trust the process and look at the long term. So this is why I think this is why in the beginning I was spending every waking moment just trying to do as much as I can, because I was like, I didn't see the long term. So to all my beginners out there, the most important thing you can do right now is just don't stress about your progress in the short term, and just do the cards, do what you can, and just trust that you will get it in the long term. So obviously I can't prove it that it works, right? But but from my experience, there will be a moment where it will start to make sense. I think my last mistake that I made was just simply overcomplicating things, because to people who don't have a lot of experience, anything is complicated, right? So when you first start working out, I want to optimize my frequency, and people do stuff like that. But that's why there's all these beginners on Reddit in r/fitness who are like, oh, what's the perfect workout program? But there's no perfect workout program, right? And you don't need to overcomplicate the variables. It's a lot more simpler than you think. So basically, just lift heavy stuff and rest a lot. That's basically the secret to fitness, right? I expose like all these fitness gurus out there, but the secret to immersion is the same thing. So there's no perfect method for language learning, and there's no optimal method. But in my opinion, I think immersion is superior because it's just so much more fun. So so if what I would tell my younger self is basically, immersion doesn't need to be as complicated as you think it is, right? It's just basically you watch stuff, you read stuff, you read the grammar, and you mind the vocab. That's just it. It's watch stuff, read grammar, mind vocab. Like those four is just basically all you have to do. There's no secrets to that. So basically, there are some extra things that you could do, but those four are the central tenements, I would say, of immersion learning. So just focus on those things, and you'll be fine. And so I think in summary, I think that honestly, all these mistakes come from all these mistakes just come from being a beginner. But I think that to some extent everyone will kind of make these mistakes when you're a beginner, but the difference is how long you stay in that stage, right? In that state of mind. So I hope that all the beginners who watch my video will at least think about switching the mindset from kind of like not believing in the method to just grinding through it, putting in the hours, and reaping the rewards at the end, right? So thank you for listening. I'm not gonna do the Korean outro this time. Sorry guys, because I've paid my dues. I've done my time. I've said my vows. I can't break my vows again. So thank you for listening, and keep immersing.